Welcome to this explainer. You know, when most people think of football, they usually picture raw passion, roaring crowds, and those spontaneous moments of pure athletic brilliance. But today, we're going to look at the beautiful game through a completely different lens. We are going to reframe football not just as a physical contest, but as a high-speed game of chess that literally took over 3,000 years to design. By focusing deeply on the evolution of team formations and strategic philosophies across history, we'll see exactly how the world's most popular sport transformed from sheer, unadulterated chaos into an absolute masterpiece of structural engineering.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. 1. From chaos to rules. 2. The early pyramids. 3. The total football revolution. And 4. Modern tactical warfare. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. From chaos to rules. So to really understand modern tactics, we've got to understand the environment that made them necessary in the first place. Thousands of years ago, ancient games like Chinese Cuju, which literally translates to kickball, well, they were used strictly as military exercises to build discipline. But if you can trust that ancient military discipline with 12th century medieval mob football in England, well, actually scratch that, it wasn't a sport, it was just absolute violence. You'd literally have hundreds of men from entire villages clashing for days over a pig's bladder. No rules, no boundaries, and definitely no tactics. Just pure brute force and a whole lot of broken bones. It wasn't until 1848 that students at Cambridge University finally drafted the Cambridge Rules. This was a massive game changer. It limited the game to 11 players, 2 goals, and 1 ball. For the very first time, the chaos was actually contained, finally giving us a structured board and a set number of pieces to play with. So here is where it gets absolutely crucial. On October 26, 1863, at the Freemasons Tavern in London, founders formed the Football Association and made what is arguably the single most important tactical decision in sports history. They explicitly separated football from rugby by outlawing the use of hands. No more carrying the ball. By mandating that only your feet and your skill could be used, they created this immense technical limitation. And you know what they say? Limitation breeds innovation. Because players couldn't just muscle their way through with their hands anymore, they suddenly had to start thinking, really thinking, about spacing, passing, and positioning.
Section 2. The early pyramids.
Moving rapidly into the 20th century, you'll see that in the early 1900s, the 2-3-5 pyramid completely dominated the pitch. It was this philosophy of pure attacking chaos, super top-heavy, basically relying on outscoring the opponent with sheer numbers up front. But as the game matured and philosophies evolved, managers realized something huge. Midfield control wins championships. Enter the 1920s and the WM formation, which was essentially a 3-2-2-3 setup. This brought in real mathematical balance. It stabilized the midfield and created a rigid defensive structure to neutralize all those attackers. Suddenly, football was no longer just about having the best individual players, it was entirely about having the absolute best systems.
Section 3. The total football revolution.
Right, so up until the 1970s, positions on the pitch were extremely rigid. Defenders stayed back, attackers stayed up. That was just how it was done. But the Dutch absolutely shattered this mindset with total football. This was a beautifully fluid tactical system where literally any outfield player could seamlessly take over the role of any other player on the pitch. If a defender pushes up to attack, boom, a midfielder immediately drops back to cover that empty space. It acted as a direct, full-blown rebellion against those rigid formations we just talked about, turning the pitch into this dynamic, living puzzle. And you literally can't talk about this without mentioning the mastermind himself, Johan Cruyff. He's often called the philosopher who turned football into art, and total football was entirely his invention. As the architect of this spatial revolution, Cruyff didn't just care about where the ball was, he understood the immense value of the empty space around it. He brilliantly took this super complex tactical theory and turned it into an unstoppable artistic reality on the grass. He led clubs like Ajax to 3 straight European Cups and completely changed the DNA of football strategy forever.
Section 4. Modern tactical warfare.
Man, the modern game evolves at just a blistering pace. We watched the highly structured 4-4-2 completely dominate the 90s, right before the 2000s came along and managers started packing the midfield with the 4-2-3-1 just to assert absolute control over the center of the pitch. And today, tactical geniuses like Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp have basically turned the pitch into a rapid-fire battlefield. We are seeing intense modern tools at work here. The relentless, suffocating hunting of gegenpressing, the sheer defensive confusion caused by false nines, and the incredibly rigid structural geometry of positional play. It is, quite literally, world-class chess being played by elite athletes at breathtaking speeds. But here's the catch. Today, these tactics aren't just about the formations themselves. They are about adapting to a flawlessly officiated environment. With the introduction of VAR, decision accuracy on the pitch shot way up from 83% to nearly 99%. Think about that. Add in goal line technology and constant video reviews, and managers know they can no longer rely on a referee's blind spot to get away with something. The game is fairer, it's so much faster, and it demands absolute tactical perfection, simply because every single millimeter is being recorded and intensely analyzed.
So, think about the journey we've just taken. We've gone from entire villages fighting over a pig's bladder in the mud to a 99% accurate, high-speed game of positional chess watched by billions of people around the globe. The beautiful game has survived, and more importantly, it has evolved through 3,000 years of rich history. But with artificial intelligence, deep data analytics, and real-time biometric tracking now actively driving managerial decisions on the sidelines, what is the next tactical revolution going to look like? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on the pitch to see exactly what the future holds.